The Grizzlies announced that they have parted ways with head coach Taylor Jenkins.
I mean, it's tough for me. Like you said, I had Coach Taylor since, I got here. I was shocked. It was a lot to process. We had to quickly turn the page to the Lakers.
Jenkins spent almost 6 years in Memphis and has the most wins in franchise history while at the helm. This news was shocking to us all, but the questions we have are why and why now?
The basketball world was left completely stunned when the Memphis Grizzlies announced the firing of head coach Taylor Jenkins. Despite a solid 44-29 record and barely any time left before the playoffs, how did one of the NBA's most promising young teams decide to part ways with the very coach who helped rebuild their identity? Today, we're diving deep into this shocking story, unveiling rumors, controversies, and every puzzling detail that got us here. Before we dive into how things started unraveling, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're into deep dives like this. We break down the biggest stories in basketball without the fluff. Just facts, receipts, and a bit of chaos. And trust me, you're going to want to see how this one ends. Now back to the video. From the moment Taylor Jenkins took over as head coach in Memphis, there was a sense of transformation in the air. The Grizzlies had been known for their grit and grind style for years. Hard-nosed defense, methodical offense, and a blue-collar work ethic that was rooted in the city's culture. Yet Jenkins managed to bring a fresh outlook. He let the young guys run in transition and gave them the freedom to expand their skills, sparking a sudden evolution in both morale and on-court strategy. In only a couple of seasons, Memphis rose from a lottery-bound squad to a legitimate force in the Western Conference. Fans couldn't believe how fast it happened. Morant's explosive performances, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s growing defensive presence, and Desmond Bane's sharpshooting all seemed to flourish under Jenkins' steady guidance. Even with injuries here and there, the team consistently managed a winning record. They were fun to watch, brimming with energy and confidence on any given night. People started talking about the Grizzlies as the NBA's next big story. Pundits pointed out how few small-market teams managed to develop this quickly without big-name free agents. Credit often went to Jenkins and his staff for maximizing player strengths and creating a culture that balanced fun with accountability. Above all, Memphis seemed to be in perfect harmony. The front office drafted talented players, and Jenkins molded them into a cohesive, overachieving group. That synergy made the abrupt firing all the more perplexing. But that was just the beginning. As the spotlight intensified and expectations soared, cracks began to show beneath the surface. The first major challenge that threatened Memphis's newfound momentum was an unfortunate string of injuries. On paper, the Grizzlies boasted one of the league's most promising cores, but reality painted a different picture when key pieces spent weeks or even months on the bench. Star players like Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane faced health setbacks that interrupted any stable chemistry. Every time the team felt close to peaking, another blow would arrive. Some critics began questioning Jenkins' ability to adjust. They insisted his offensive game plans relied too heavily on certain players driving to the hoop and that he didn't focus enough on consistent half-court sets. But others argued his creativity was precisely why the Grizzlies kept winning despite constant injuries. When Morant was out, Memphis found ways to play through Bane. When Jackson was hobbled, the team leaned on other role players to pick up the slack. They never seemed to lose that competitive edge. Still, injuries don't always show up just on the stat sheet. They can also strain relationships. Some rumored that behind closed doors, frustration boiled over. Players grow tired of the constant adjustments. Coaches have to patch up the rotation on the fly. As the health situation wore on, the question lingered. Was Jenkins truly the scapegoat? Or did the issues run deeper? But there was another factor that overshadowed the injury bug, stirring speculation about Jenkins' job security. Morant was, and still is, the electrifying face of the franchise. His jaw-dropping athleticism, fearless drives, and charismatic presence made him the star Memphis desperately needed. Yet as his profile rose, so did the scrutiny. Injuries nagged him. Off-court stories began to swirl, from social media mishaps to rumored disagreements with staff. Suddenly, the unstoppable highlight reel point guard was often sidelined or making headlines for the wrong reasons. Speculation grew that Morant's availability and the tension it created was wearing out the Grizzlies' patience. By extension, it might have worn out Jenkins' job security. Whenever a franchise has a special talent like Ja, management usually does everything possible to keep the star happy. If there were friction between player and coach, even quietly, It wouldn't be the first time a team sided with its marquee attraction. Some corners of the internet whispered about a strained relationship. Others pointed to Morant's public support for Jenkins in interviews, saying the two had a solid working bond. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But it's hard to ignore the reality. Memphis committed to Morant long-term, handing him a massive contract extension to make him the face of the team. So if push came to shove, Jenkins would be the more expendable piece. Yet even the Ja Morant factor can't fully explain why Memphis pulled the plug so abruptly. For that, we might need to look behind the scenes where rumors of internal dissatisfaction lurked. When a team overperforms early, expectations can spiral out of control. It's possible that the Grizzlies' front office and ownership believed they were on the cusp of immediate title contention, only to discover playoff success is rarely that simple. Add to this the rumors. Was there a power struggle between management and Jenkins over roster moves? Did certain veterans question his style? Or did younger players feel he was too strict? Or maybe not strict enough? Over the past year, there were subtle signs of upheaval. Several staff members linked closely to Jenkins were reassigned or left voluntarily. Critics saw this as a hint the franchise wanted to shake things up without fully cutting ties with the head coach, at least not yet. Meanwhile, morale among some roster members reportedly dipped as new faces arrived. The chemistry Jenkins once meticulously built might have started to fray under the weight of big expectations and bigger personalities. In a league dominated by megastar power, coaches often find themselves in precarious positions. If a team's best players collectively turn on you, it's game over. If the front office decides your voice no longer resonates, no amount of X's and O's brilliance will save you. Something triggered a tipping point in Memphis. Whether it was a single incident or a long-standing pattern of behind-the-scenes friction. And it all exploded at a moment nobody expected. Firing a head coach with only 9 games left before the playoffs is nearly unheard of. Historically, late-season firings happen when a team is sinking like a rock, far outside the playoff picture. But the Grizzlies were sitting comfortably with a winning record, one of the best in the Western Conference. That's why this decision shook the NBA world so deeply. Fans and analysts immediately scoured the archives for similar scenarios. Sure, there have been mid-season firings of successful teams, but those typically happen closer to the All-Star break. The Cleveland Cavaliers once removed a winning head coach, David Blatt, but that was still months before the postseason. Same for the Milwaukee Bucks parting ways with Adrian Griffin when the team struggled earlier, not at the 11th hour. In Memphis's case, 9 games is barely enough time for a new coach to hang up his jacket, let alone implement a fresh philosophy. So what could possibly push the Grizzlies to pull the trigger so late? One theory is that a major internal blow-up forced management's hand. Another possibility is that ownership decided the team was underperforming in critical moments, and a final losing streak sealed Jenkins' fate. Some insiders even whisper that certain star players delivered an ultimatum, though proof of that remains elusive. Regardless, the timing signals desperation, an all-or-nothing move that will define the franchise for years. But timing alone doesn't paint the full picture. Let's take a closer look at the motives driving this bombshell decision. One line of thinking is that Memphis feels it must capitalize on its prime competitive window right now. When a small market team strikes gold with a generational talent like Morant, the pressure to contend can become intense. Championship windows can slam shut faster than expected due to injuries, contract disputes, or younger players wanting bigger roles. Perhaps the front office saw cracks forming and decided Jenkins wasn't the man to hold everything together when it mattered most. Another angle, maybe Jenkins lost the trust of players behind closed doors. Leadership extends beyond drawing up plays. It's about motivating and maintaining unity. If word got back to ownership that the locker room was no longer buying into Jenkins' message, letting him go might have seemed the only choice, no matter how drastic. In an era where player power is king, coaches often get replaced long before rosters undergo major upheaval. Still, there's also the possibility that Memphis has been eyeing a hot new candidate from the assistant ranks or outside the organization. In the NBA, front offices sometimes make a swift move so they can lock in a new coach before the rest of the league pounces. This might explain why they fired Jenkins just ahead of the playoffs. Maybe they're positioning themselves to seize the next brilliant basketball mind who becomes available. Yet all these motives beg another question. Who steps into Jenkins' shoes? And can that person salvage the season? Memphis wasted no time promoting Jenkins' top assistant as the interim head coach. While few outside the organization may recognize his name, there's evidence to suggest he played a pivotal role in the team's defensive schemes and offensive sets. The players apparently respect his toughness and pragmatic approach. If those rumors are true, the Grizzlies might get that short-term boost so many teams experience when they change coaches mid-season. Meanwhile, everyone's speculating about who the Grizzlies could chase for a full-time role. Would they dare bring in a veteran with championship pedigree? Could a college coach with an innovative system catch their eye? Or will they stick with a rising star from the assistant pool who can grow alongside the roster? Names like Nick Nurse or Kenny Atkinson might resurface. Some even wonder about the legendary Greg Popovich's future, though that seems far-fetched unless the Spurs fully rebuild without him. Interestingly, many insiders predict that Taylor Jenkins himself won't be on the unemployment line for long. Teams struggling to find a stable coach. Philadelphia, for instance. If their experiment with Nick Nurse eventually unravels, could see Jenkins as an immediate upgrade. In the chaotic NBA coaching carousel, today's fired genius is tomorrow's new savior. But as the dust settles, the question remains: is this bold move truly a step forward for Memphis, or the beginning of a downward spiral? There was a time when the Grizzlies were revered as an organization that did everything right. They drafted well, developed players carefully, and stood by their head coaches. Now, the abrupt firing of Taylor Jenkins reveals an entirely different narrative. One of a franchise possibly feeling cornered by high expectations, star demands, and the looming possibility of yet another early playoff exit. If the new coach steps in and miraculously leads the team on a deep postseason run, the front office's gamble will look brilliant. But if Memphis flounders, fans may look back at Jenkins' departure as the start of a chaotic new era. From the outside, we can only guess what truly went down in those closed-door meetings. Did Jenkins fail to elevate the team's playoff performance? Or was he merely a casualty of unfortunate injuries? Did one or more star players grow tired of his voice? Or did the front office panic after a brief rough patch? The truth will likely remain behind the scenes, at least until someone decides to spill the details. For now, Memphis players must band together under their new coach, a daunting task when faced with the toughest stretch of the season. Grizzlies fans will wait nervously to see if this team can overcome its latest hurdle, or if the franchise might regret shaking up the foundation that propelled them from underdogs to contenders. One thing is certain: the NBA never fails to serve up jaw-dropping drama, and the Grizzlies' firing of Taylor Jenkins might be one of this season's biggest shocks. Taylor Jenkins' sudden dismissal is a move that raises more questions than answers. It challenges our perceptions of team loyalty, small market patience, and the delicate balance of star player influence. Was this a desperate gamble or a calculated risk that could ultimately pay off? Only time will tell if the Grizzlies' leadership saw a hidden opportunity or if they've made a mistake that sends them tumbling back into obscurity. What do you think? Did Memphis pull the trigger too early, or was it time for a new voice on the sidelines? The NBA playoffs are looming, and this franchise is now under a glaring spotlight. As the smoke settles, we'll find out if the Grizzlies can rise from this shocking shakeup, or if this decision will haunt them for seasons to come. One thing is for sure: the Memphis Grizzlies just turned the entire basketball world upside down, leaving all of us wondering who will truly have the last laugh. And that's the real story behind the firing that stunned the league. If you thought this was the end of the drama, think again, because what happens next might just eclipse everything that came before. Stay tuned, folks. The Memphis saga is far from over. Thank you so much for watching till the very end. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you never miss our next upload.